Outstanding work of our change agents and Dr. Johnny Cruz Craig. We worked on different topics, not just the normal thing. You know, we worked on culturally relevant teaching, social and emotional learning, trauma-informed classrooms, and the whole child, just to name a few.
In terms of what you all are doing and what it means to us and what it means to everyone, education is a foundational key. I think it was George Washington Carver that said education is the key to freedom, which is the tie and the link between education and social action.
Delta pushed early on that it's not just matriculating through a scripted curriculum that may not teach needed life and adaptive skills. We have been pushing through our gyms and other programs that you need to focus on educating the whole person so that our next generation has the basic life skills to navigate and adapt in now an even more demanding and unrelenting world environment.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Does It Equate? Tonight, we are gathered here to have a conversation about equity in education. And we want to make sure that if you want to continue the conversation after tonight, that you text Join TAG to 51555, and equity warriors all over this country will be happy to engage in that conversation. I'm Pamela Tola Criswell, an assistant principal in Granville County, North Carolina, and I am an equity warrior. Marisha, tag your it.
Thanks, Pamela. My name is Marisha Leek, and I'm representing Charlotte, North Carolina, where I serve as a middle school English language arts facilitator by day and a voracious reader by night. I'm excited to engage in this conversation with you all this evening. Up next, Renice, tag your it.
Thank you. Thank you, Marisha. I'm Renice Gerard, representing Eastern Carolina in Greenville, North Carolina, home of the Pirates. I'm an instructional coach in Pitt County, And Consuela, tag, you're it.
Good evening. My name is Consuela Chambers Banks, and I'm representing Wake County Public Schools, where I serve as a middle school counselor. I also have the opportunity to serve as a trained circle keeper and school counselor equity group leader. Tia, tag, you're it.
Hi, my name is Tia Gillen Wilson, and I'm joining you from Alamance County, North Carolina. I am a third grade teacher at Elon Elementary School, and I'm looking forward to this conversation about equity in education.
Hi, my name is Saida. I'm an assistant principal in Caswell County Schools. I serve ferociously to be your co-host today, and I'm so excited to have this conversation. So once again, tag Pamela, you're it.
Again, we're going to have a conversation about equity in education, and we have two amazing equity warriors that are here with us this evening. It is my pleasure to be able to introduce those people to you. Tonight, we have with us Mrs. Tyrona Hooker, who is the former North Carolina Teacher of the Year and the current Executive Director for Alamance Achieves, which is an all-in partnership of leaders in education, business, government, philanthropy, and community and faith organizations across Alamance County who are working together to tackle pressing issues and achieve long-term goals. Ms. Hooker is a true scholar. She has multiple degrees, including a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice from North Carolina Central University, a teacher certification from North Carolina Central University, and a Master's in Education from Elon University. She is a former middle school teacher who taught for 10 years in Graham, North Carolina. Mrs. Hooker received her nonprofit management certification from Duke University in 2019. Let's welcome this equity warrior. Our other panelist for tonight is Mr. Terence Hennett, who is a graduate of Bedingfield High School located in Wilson, North Carolina. He received the Pee Wee and Myrtle Owen Scholarship, which allowed him to attend Barton College and to earn his Bachelor of Science degree in secondary education with a concentration in social studies. Terrence taught in Wilson County for 4 years, then worked for 3 years in Wake County Schools. He is currently a middle school assistant principal in Wake County Public Schools. He is also pursuing a doctorate degree in educational leadership and cultural foundations at the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. His passion and focus is empowering students to feel seen, cared for, and heard. He continues to work and advocate for equity and inclusion in all academic settings. Now, let's welcome this equity warrior, Mr. Terence Hennett. Now, it's time to engage in the conversation about equity with our panelists. We're going to do this in a little different way tonight. And to describe what we're going to do, we're going to talk about does equity in what does it mean? All students have opportunities and access based on their individual needs to various support systems, tools, technologies, and information to prepare them for the future. Equity does not mean the same. And we're going to play a wheel game tonight with our panelists to talk about various areas where we may or may not feel that inequity exists. And Saida is going to take us on this journey.
Oh, I'm so excited. You all, before I take you on this journey, I want to give an opportunity for our guest panelists to give an introduction for themselves. My sister Pamela did such an excellent job. I have to give them an opportunity to reiterate all about Mr. Terence Hennett as well as Miss Tyrona Hooker. Miss Hooker, go ahead and go first and just give us a snippet of the awesomeness we're about to experience.
My name is Ty Hooker, Executive Director of Alamance Achieves. Extremely excited to be here. Alamance Achieves is a collective impact model that is focusing on cradle to career. What do we do to increase educational outcomes for kids? As we know, the livelihood of our children will determine the success in our community. Very excited to be here and a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Hennett, do you mind going second? Go ahead and share a little bit about yourself with the audience.
I'm so happy to be here on this evening to just share in this space with such great and wonderful people. I'm an assistant principal in Wake County Public Schools, and I'm just here to share what I know and engage in this deep conversation on this evening.
Thank you.
Yes. Now we come to the platform of why equity. And Pamela and I will be having a good time tonight talking about our equity wheels, conversing with the audience as well as our panelists. What you will notice is that we will have a wheel, and each wheel has descriptive terms used when we talk about equity in education. We will try to end it with our common phrase of, does it equate? Does it equal? Is it equal amongst everyone? We would love the audience engagement. In fact, we are here for your engagement. Pamela and I did a lot of research when we talk about equity in education, and we're going to explain some of those terms and have dialogue and conversation with not only our panelists, but you, the audience. So make sure that you do two things. Make sure that you stay tuned. Also, make sure that you join us at Join Tag to 51555. Make sure we can go ahead and do this. Are we ready to spin this wheel? Panelists and my wonderful co-host, are we ready?
Yes, we are.
Yes, yes. So let's go ahead and we will say it all together. Does it equate? Does it equate? Let's spin the wheel.
Let's get this party started.
Absolutely. Right. Our first word, teacher retention. We're talking specifically about African-American teachers, also our African-American males, which we know we need to increase that. But does it equate across the board? Is it equitable? Is it equal? I would love for Ty Hooker to start first to talk about teacher retention.
I don't think it is equitable across the board. I think the first thing we need to do in our educational system is look at the systemic issues that involve recruiting and retaining men of color and teachers of color. We have to have a culture that is inviting. And as we think about what is inclusive, what is the opportunity for them to, number one, understand within themselves what it takes to educate in a classroom, to be valued and not considered tokens, to make sure that there's a livable wage. And also, how do we ensure that the professional development that is necessary to grow them takes place? It is very easy to fill a building, but not prepare people to be educators. So as I look into the classrooms and I look in the hallways and I don't see our men of color and teachers of color, or if they're there, it's for a short period of time. I think oftentimes it is the cultural experience, it is the pride in the building, it is the professionalism, it is the way in which they are greeted that determines whether or not they stay. And in our community, we can dress it up all day, but relationships matter. So until I know you care about me, it's hard for me to do what you need me to do, or to feel like what I'm doing is valued. So how do we begin to value people of color in the profession? How do we begin to give them a different experience? And how do we allow their narrative to show up in spaces and places where students can then connect and learn? Why must we play the code switch in the game in order to be accepted and to seek promotion? So I don't think it's equitable.
Oh my goodness. That was so, I know we got to hear Terrence, but that was just amazing. And valued and not seen as tokens is powerful. And that is so real. And I love the way you said that, Ty, valued and not seen as tokens, because I believe that oftentimes when we have our African-American males in our buildings, they're just tokens there and their value is non-existent. Thank you so much for that response.
Now, Terrence, this was definitely a descriptor that fits you to a T. I would love to hear what you have to say about teacher retention, African Americans, and especially the African American males. Audience, tune in.
Absolutely. I want to echo what Ms. Hooker said. Relationships do matter. It's important. It's good to say that we need more people of color, more males of color, but how are we keeping them in the system? How are we keeping them in education? How are we showing them that we care and that we matter, how they matter to us? Another big thing is looking at North Carolina Teaching Fellows. There is not an HBCU that's listed a part of that. So how are we creating that pipeline or maintaining that pipeline for more African Americans to come into the profession of teaching? Because students need to see themselves in that classroom, because if they don't see a teacher that look like them, then it doesn't create a student that wants to become a teacher as well. So my question is always back to, what are the supports, what are the initiatives, and how are we maintaining and keeping them in there as we're maintaining those relationships, those authentic relationships? So no, it does not equate.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to our next spin. And we're going to actually say it together as best as we can. Does it equate?
Wow.
Technology. Technology is huge. This could be the use of technology, the availability of the technology, the type of technology, because believe it or not, TV and TV monitors are still considered technology. I'm not sure how long or how old our audience is, but I remember a TV monitor versus these Chromebooks. All of that is still considered technology. Do we think it's equitable across the board? I would love to start off with Terrence talking about technology. Does it equate?
Thank you so much for letting me start off. Thinking about technology, does it equate? No. Actually, as I was doing a little research last night, reading the new report that came out from North Carolina Public Education Forum, they discussed the major digital divide that is taking place in North Carolina, simply because COVID-19 really showed that great disparity. A lot of our students do not have high-speed internet, so students are not actively able to engage in instruction. So we see that happening right now, right before our eyes in these virtual classroom settings. Also, access to technology and digital resources is even more prevalent that students cannot access because they may not have a device, they may not have a Chromebook, they may not have that high-speed internet. And also, we talk about looking at the homes. You know, our students may not know how to tap into those resources, or the families may not know how to tap into those resources or use laptops or computers. So right now, no, it does not equate, and it takes more and more work to ensure that our students can be successful.
Wonderful. Now, Ty Hooker, we would love for you to talk about technology. Remember, does it equate?
I'm just going to applaud everything that Terrence said, and no, it does not equate. And what I'm seeing happening in community is exactly what he said. In our marginalized community, in many cases, there's a decision of paying cable versus having basic needs met. Kids may have access to technology, it's normally not high speed. And then we think about the digital divide between parents, depending on their age. So even thinking about how do we set our students up to be successful as well as parents, is there tutorial, is there opportunity for parents to make sure they're able to support students properly? Can they have access to be in Google Classroom, to observe as if they would in person? So there's a lot of things that are needed in order for our students to be successful. We often think if they can navigate a phone, they can navigate all of the different platforms that is being thrown at them by the school system, and it's not necessarily true. And I would say that this current COVID situation has literally exposed what we've known in our community to be a problem all along. But now that it has knocked on some white folks' doors, things are beginning to change. But I don't think it is equitable. And I think until we can build out opportunity and strong enough curriculum with training and support, our students are still lagging. And there's a cultural piece that I'm noticing with technology. We don't know what's going on in the homes of our students. And so there is a lot of conversation around, please turn your camera on, please turn your camera on. But you don't know the devastation that may come when that light comes on.
I want to ask a follow-up question to that. So as equity warriors, what do you see our role in helping to make sure that technology is equitable across the board, especially in North Carolina, because that's where we are? We know it's a national problem, but here in our state, as equity warriors, what are some of your suggestions of how we can advocate and make this something happen so that our children do have equitable resources?
Mm-hmm. And any one of you all can address that question.
Well, I can go first. I think it goes to simply funding. Think about our local, looking at your local your county commissioners, looking at how they allocate their budget, looking at our state, how they allocate their budget, because that's what it really boils down to. Where are you putting your money at? And that speaks volume. So it goes to elections. I'm not promoting anyone. I'm not promoting elections, but elections speak volumes to what people believe and what their values are, because we know that that's where it's at. Like, we need the money, we need the funds, and COVID-19 has really showed us tremendously like where the gaps are existing. So one thing that we can do as educators is finding ways to tap into our students, find out, because what this did is we didn't teach students how to like do Google Classrooms and how to do virtual learning. This is something that happened instantly. And so now it's something that we as educators is going to shift how we are training educators for the future, and what are we doing at school as providing in professional learning to ensure that whatever may happen, we can be flexible.
Absolutely. And Ms. Hooker, you want to address this?
The only thing I'll add to what Terrence said, which was wonderful, is in addition to us voting, is finding qualified candidates to run for office who support our belief, policies, and procedures. So vote and run, be involved.
Thank
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Now we're going to spin the wheel one more time. And as we're spinning the wheel, I want the audience to say, even if it's at your house, because that's how passionate you are, does it equate? We are looking at the disparities within our school community, within our neighborhood. We are looking at this wheel as a microcosm of our community and words that should be echoing in our ear every single day. So I will say it once again. Does it equate? Let's spin that wheel. We're going to do it. We're going to spin it one more time. We're going to spin it one more time. Since we addressed it already, we're going to spin it one more time.
Wow.
McKinney-Vento. Now, some may say, what is that? Who is that? Well, this is a part of a bill that supports our economically disadvantaged or homeless population. So I'll repeat, this supports our economically disadvantaged or our homeless population. And we would love to know the equity in education within that platform. Does it equate? And Ty, go ahead and go first and address McKinney-Vento or our economically homeless disadvantaged children.
I don't think it equates. And I think for many of our students, it is just struggle of day-to-day maintenance and the barriers that they're up against in regards to where they are, if they have access to the learning environment that is necessary to complete assignments, to do them in a timely manner. If there is stability, oftentimes teachers don't know who shows up in their classroom and what they're coming from. So I do think that relationship still begins to build this. I know that there is some funding, but I think it's going to also be some innovative ways in order to move beyond the walls of the classroom. In our community, we have 25 kids who live in a hotel. We've been trying to push into there to provide some literacy training. At this point, we haven't had that opportunity, but how do we know where our students are coming from and know the needs of our students? And as educators and community, because it's bigger than just teachers, how do we begin to put in place structures to make sure kids are successful? It is not equitable, and it is no way that they can pull themselves up by their bootstraps and be successful when they don't even have boots. So it's going to require a collective effort in order to make sure that the kids in our marginalized communities are met where they are and given the additional support necessary to be successful.
Yes.
Wonderful. I know we can share the experience, Pamela and I, just as some educational leaders within the room, how we have to always address teachers who are so concentrated on a pencil and not concentrated on the present. And I mean the presence of a student who may be homeless, who may be economically disadvantaged, just being in the presence of school, knowing that he or she may not have everything. And is it equitable? If we allow students not to get into classrooms or close the door because they don't have a pencil, what does that say about education? What does that say about being equitable? And I quickly give them whatever resources that we have to make sure that at least they can come halfway up to their counterparts by having a pencil. I'm hoping that any educator listening to this understands that you have a population of children that goes from A to Z. And the last thing we want to do is to stop them at the door for not having pencils, erasers, not following your teacher list, not providing any type of insight, not having a speaker, and definitely not turning that camera on. So as passionate as I am, I'm going to allow Mr. Hennett to go ahead and address McKinney-Vento, our economically disadvantaged or homeless population. Does it equate?
No, it does not equate. And like Ms. Hooker said, the whole concept of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, we need to move from that thinking in education, because what is the purpose of education? What is the purpose of schooling? Many of our students go through so many things before they come to school. And no, I'm not creating this mentality of poverty, but however, we need to be very cognizant of the issues, the situations that students are dealing with. Students need more access to food and medical care. And some of our most vulnerable students need those additional resources. And I think even more so today, teachers need more training. Educators need more training in trauma-informed situations that students are coming in, that they're coming from, because the different things that we're experiencing today is totally different. So we need to be conscientious, we need to be mindful of our students, and like I said, we need to get away from that pull yourself up by your bootstraps thinking, where if you do it, if you work hard, you're gonna overcome, because many of our students don't just overcome. How can we help them? How can we support them get where they need to be?
And oh my gosh, you guys, your answers are just so amazing. And I have been having these conversations about, we have to get from outside, even in a pandemic, we have to go outside of the building and build relationships with our families, every stakeholder involved in education in our communities. We have to get out and develop relationships outside of the building. We don't know what's going on if we're not out there. Even in a pandemic, we have to get outside of the building.
I am so loving all of these conversations. And I'm also loving all of the comments. We are privy to see each and every one of your comments. So before we're going to stop right now and address some of those audience questions, I would love for my sister in DTEC-TAG to go ahead and address audience questions and answers. Renice, Tag, you're it.
Wow, this has been a great conversation, and it does not stop here. So we're going to address some questions. All right, let's see. In what ways can teachers practice equity in their classrooms?
And any of you all can address that question. You just unmute yourself. And right now we have stopped with our equity wheel, as much fun as we're having, to make sure that we can get as many audience questions selected and answered. So Ty or Terrence, go ahead and take your shot at any of those questions.
So how can teachers practice equity in their classroom? I think first you need to learn your students' names. It's simple. One of the things teachers may think, oh, I don't need to worry about or learn that student name, but a name is very important. So learn your student names, learn your student story, and don't further stereotypes in your classroom setting, because then that just causes more issues and more problems, and then it may cause more additional harm than expected. So I think making sure and build those authentic connections and relationships with your students in the classroom. And then also be culturally responsive, but then let's move beyond culturally responsive to be community responsive. One of my good friends, Michael Parker West, talks about being responsive to the community around the school that they serve or that we serve.
Oh my goodness. When you start talking about names, you hit it head as the name of Saida, and so many people say, what is your mama about? I had to tell them, hey, my last name was not selected for me. And unfortunately, it comes with scars and hardship and the word of slavery. But my first name was my given name that was chosen specifically for me. And that's why when you're dealing with African American teachers and African-American people and African-American teachers, students. It does not matter if their name is Quanisha. It does not matter if it has different accents. That was part of their creativity. That shaped who they are. Goodness, Terrence, you hit the nail on the head with that one. Let's see another question. Or Ms. Hooker, do you want to address that one for me?
Terrence dropped the mic. The only other thing I would add to that is please make sure in our classrooms that we have restorative practices rather than everything being punitive. Give students an opportunity to experience some type of success within the classroom. Building relationship with parents, knowing that they know their students the best, know everyone's learning style. Yelling and screaming doesn't always move students, and operating within fear does not mean that I'm getting the concept or the curriculum any differently. So knowing how to address your students and how they learn best also gives an opportunity for success. No one wants to show up anywhere every day when they know they're not successful or valued.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yes. All right, let's have another question. Let's see. Do you have any resources or books that you recommend that focus on equity? Ty, do you want to start with this one?
A book that I would recommend for everybody is Race, Equity, and Education, 60 Years from Brown. That's a book that I think is really, really powerful. And I would also suggest everyone who has the opportunity, and there is some community grant opportunity, is to attend racial equity training or the groundwater presentation. I think it is very important for us to have the language necessary to begin to have dialogue and conversation in our building. Even us as adults, knowing how to navigate that then gives us opportunity to work with our partners in the building. And I'm not necessarily interested in allies. I want some co-conspirators. So how do we win people over to be a part of the work with us and give our students what they need in order to be successful? So those are just a few of my recommendations.
Drop my pencil.
So I'm gonna just take a stab at it real quick. I like to read, so I have quite a few books, but I'm gonna name at least 2 or 3. Abolitionist Teaching by Bettina Love. Very, very good read. I really enjoyed reading that this summer. And also I would suggest reading, let's read Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. That's a very good one as well. And if you like to listen to something on your way into work, Seeing White, which was done out of Duke, which is very good, talks about the history of whiteness in America, and also Code Switch. I really enjoy those as well.
Okay, great. We did have a question in our comments, and it is from Stacy Johnson, Klasky Johnson. It's $300 for an individual to attend phase 1 training through area to address racial equity. How do we get this training in our schools for our staff members?
And anyone can address that question.
Do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, $300 for an individual to attend phase 1 training through area to address racial equity. How do we get this training in our schools for our staff members?
I think one way to do that is to ask and I don't know if it would be your building leader or starting at central office, but my belief is that each system should have some type of equity budget. And if they don't, then maybe that's where the conversation begins. Again, in your building or at the system level, what is your investment in equity and how do teachers have the opportunity to receive training? And I feel like also there is potential to partner with outside businesses or organizations, and that grant funding may be available in many cases to support teachers. I don't think $300 is easy to come across by any means. So I'm by no means thinking that price is simple, but I do feel like that, back to what Terrence said earlier, there is a community investment in educators and in our communities to make sure our kids have opportunity. So I think it is having those critical conversations in a lot of different spaces. Perhaps some faith-based organizations may be able to sponsor teachers, but I think having the conversation and asking, what can you do to ensure we are equitable each and every time we step in our building and in our classrooms?
Yes. All right, let's see. I think we have time for one more question. How can we work with the community to provide remote learning resources to ensure all children have equitable access?
How can we work with the community? I think it will take, or it's going to take, many of us making partnerships with our local churches and other organizations within the community, such as the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA or any other local organization that may be providing child care to children at this current moment, to see how we can help support student learning, how can we provide information that helps with the instructional process with Google Meets or Google Classroom or however that may be. So I think it's just we'll take that community effort. It's going to take that collective effort to get together to push our students to help them be successful.
Okay.
I want to say something before Ty gives her response to this. You know, we have this streaming on many different platforms, and this is a rich conversation that people will definitely benefit from being engaged in. So if you are listening to us on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, please share what we are doing right now, because it is important information for every educator, no matter where they are, to discuss equity and to find out resources and suggestions on how we can make sure that it is equitable education across the board for all of our young people. And also text join tag to 51555.
All right, I think. And I guess we have time for one more question, another question. Let's see. In my opinion, schools are institutionally racist and expect people of color and lower socioeconomic statuses to assimilate to the institution. What can be done to stop this from happening?
Ty, you want to take this one?
I think it is first valuing the culture of the students who show up, setting the expectations and making them clear, considering whether or not our curriculum is rigorous and relevant, because oftentimes when students disengage, it is because it is just traditional things that were taught years ago. But how do we engage our students? We talked a little last night about project-based learning. What's necessary for students to begin to take place and take hold of their education that is not about the systemic nature that we know was designed for us not to be successful. But how do we have expectations rather than sympathy? I don't need you to feel sorry for our students. I need you to educate our students in the efforts that they then rise above the situation. So how do we look at students from a value base rather than a deficit base? There is assets in every community. We have to learn to value them. So oftentimes it is coming out of the balcony and joining our students on the dance floor. You have to be proximate to the problem to hear what possible solutions exist.
Yes.
And can I just say one thing before we move from that? And Ms. Hooker, she's phrased it great. And another thing is, when we think about this, radically speaking, should we just destroy the system and start all over again? Because we know the system has been built. It's a system, it's a structure, and it's doing exactly what it's meant to do. And our students, they deserve better, they deserve more. So I think it's important, it's imperative, and it starts from the top, and it's what people value. And if they don't see the value within our students, if they don't see the value in our Black and Brown and Indigenous students in our marginalized groups, then you will not see that shift. So sometimes it may start small as a grassroots with teachers in that building, but also at the same time, make sure you protect yourself so that you don't burn out in that struggle fighting for what's right, to do what's right. But it does start from the top, and it's all starting with beliefs and values.
Yes.
Renise, can I ask a question in here?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Right now in our country, the climate is really unstable, and a lot of educators are experiencing fear in doing their job, and even in some cases trying to be equitable, trying to show compassion, trying to let others know that they really care. We've heard about teachers who've lost their jobs for wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt or whatever. What suggestions do you have for educators to be able to try to have equity in their classrooms, at the same time working with fear of what could happen because they're trying to be equitable across the board, not just when it comes to technology or something like that, but there's a fear there. And because of that, what could happen as a result of their fear, they are not doing some things. What suggestions would you give to get past that fear and do what's right?
Audience, please, please, please go ahead and you too comment, answer some of these questions. You are now a part of our group. You are now an equity warrior. So we would love to hear from our panelists, and we will also love to hear from our audience. Please address some of these questions that we are saying. And Terrence, you can go first.
Thinking about that question, you're right. Many people are living in fear. They're thinking about, if I say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, post the wrong thing, is that going to be my job on the line? And so I really think about how educators can do this work, and also who can give space, who's giving space to this work. And so when we think about equity, and as we're pushing this conversation along, I think it's important to make sure to have that buddy, have that small group, like they just put in the group message, that you can confide in, that you can grow in, because starting equity work is not easy. It's not, I'm not going to say it's going to be a walk in the park. It's not going to be this easy drive down the street, because it is hard work. It is difficult work. But when we think about it, even thinking about Black Lives Matter, it is a social issue. It's a social issue that's taking place. So how is it any different than the women's rights issue? That was a question that was posed in one of my classes. So how is it any different now? So I think it's crucial that you find people that you can find in those safe spaces, that you really can make sure that you engage in those conversations as you're moving the work forward.
Thank you.
And it looks like we have time for one more question. So this will be our last question, and I would love to hear from both of our panelists. And Renita, you have one more question?
Yes, I think we have a parent question.
Okay.
Oh, not a parent. Yeah, there it is. As a parent, what can I do to advocate for my child and ensure they are getting an equitable education?
Great question.
Great question.
You have to build relationships with the teacher. You have to ask a lot of questions and listen to understand, and then inquire to have clarity. It is asking for access. I know that we're not in classroom right now, but being a guardian on the Google Classroom, all of the other different platforms, so you have the opportunity to see. As a parent, I am the expert when it comes to my child. I know them better than anybody. So being able to partner with that teacher to come with a system of learning that supports them, and not allowing anyone to write the narrative for your child, but to know their strengths, their areas of growth, and their opportunities, and being that voice of reason, showing up in a space that requires you to act a certain way. So let's be clear about that, because educators deserve to be respected. It's hard work. But how do I make sure that I have shifted the power, that the teacher knows I'm in camp with you. We're on a team together. And then being willing to say, when you don't think things are going well, how do we revisit this? How do we have additional conversations? What is the communication that's necessary? And as a parent, asking for the time that works for you. If a 12 o'clock parent-teacher conference doesn't work because of your job, being willing to ask for that and advocate for opportunity so that your child has a voice and has someone that's going to support them. I think parents have to advocate in order to make sure children have access to success.
Yes, Terrence, would you like to add to that?
Sure. And additionally, engagement looks different for every family. Some teachers may say, "Never see the parent," or "I never hear from the parent." But you have some teachers have to realize that it can be different for each home, depending on the situation, because that parent woke that child up, got them to school, told them that, hey, you need to do your work. That is engagement. So I tell parents, or I ask parents, to be active, to be attentive, to be informed. it's important that you are have that information. But then too, I always wonder what is preventing families or what is preventing that parent from coming to the school. I remember listening to Dr. Karen Mapp, who discussed or said that, there are ghosts that people have. And so they may have had a bad experience or a traumatizing experience in school. So that may be preventing them from coming into your school building. So is it inviting? Is it welcoming to those that need to come to our buildings? So sometimes we need to do some self-reflection and ask, how are we making sure that we are providing that welcoming space for families to come to our buildings?
Absolutely. Great answer.
And just to add one thing to that, the vocabulary that parents understand. If I need a glossary to have a parent-teacher conference, then no one has walked away with anything. So being able to remove the jargon and have conversation based on what parents need to know in order to be a teammate.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that's great. We're going to stop questions right here, but we can continue this conversation. You are equity warriors now. So text join tag to 51555. Look for us on social media for the NC Tag team. Also, you can follow DTEC-TAG as well. I'm going to throw it to and tag in my partner, Consuela. Tag, you're it.
On behalf of the NC Tag team, I would like to thank our panelists. This certificate of appreciation is presented to Tyrona Hooker for your continued dedication to advocating great change in education. Thank you so much for being on with us tonight and for sharing all of the great information that you've shared with us. This certificate of appreciation is presented to Terence Hennett for your continued dedication to advocating great change in education. Thank you, Mr. Hennett, for joining us tonight. And I also want to say I enjoy having the opportunity to work with Mr. Hennett and to watch him with or implement in our school staff some of the things that he does around equity and just making change for our students. Now I'm going to pass it to Marisha. Tag, you're it.
Thank you so much, Consuela. Again, we just want to thank all of the equity warriors for joining us tonight and engaging in this very important conversation. As we all know, education in North Carolina is in a fragile state right now. And the more people who join in on that conversation, the more we can advocate and do what's best for the students across this state. We also want to take some time to let you all know about some upcoming opportunities that we have to continue this great conversation. First up, in 2 weeks, we have an engaging discussion with Dr. Jen Mangrum, candidate for North Carolina Superintendent of Public Instruction, as she discusses the state of education in North Carolina. You can register for this event at the bit.ly/NC Ed chat. In 2021, you can also join us in February for a discussion around social justice, and in March for a conversation around leadership mindset, with a culminating event in April that will be a symposium that we'll have to close out this season of advocacy work and this phase of TAG 2.0. As always, we would love to hear your feedback, so please complete the survey that is scrolling at the link on your screen right now. And you can also follow us for more information at our Facebook page, which is listed above. And also you can join us on Twitter at the handle NCTAG2. Lastly, I would like to invite you all to again text join tag to 51555, and Saida will close us out now.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, what an excellent event. Thank you so much, Ms. Tyrona Hooker. Thank you so much, Mr. Terence Hennett. I want to thank all of my sisters. I got all of my sisters in me. So I want to thank Renee, Pamela, Marisha, Tia, myself, Consuela. Oh my goodness. This was so good. We had so much fun. It was passionate. But wait, you can definitely join our family, join our sisterhood of fun dealing with equity and passion in education by texting Join Tag to 51555. Plus, you get a bonus video at the very end. Not only do we do this in North Carolina, but we do this across the globe. We're going to send you out with some of our advocacy snippets. We do a DTEC-TAG, but as always, we thank you for joining us. We thank you for representing. We thank you for being a part of DTEC-TAG North Carolina. And we say, see you later.
Tag.
We gotta fight against them, but we need numbers. We need to show up at school board meetings. We need to show up at county commissioner meetings. We need to have someone on the agenda to talk and know what they're talking about to advocate.
Almost.